Hi, this is Kevin Trainer, and I'd like to welcome you to the introductory lecture for INFOST 780-201. That's XML for libraries online in the spring of 2016. And right now we have a view of the landing page on our D2L site where we have the news and announcements and those kinds of things. And I've done something slightly different for the schedule in this semester. So let me take us there. So if you click on the content link on the D2L page, there's, let's see, table of contents, and then within that there's the syllabus, which has a copy of the syllabus, a page for the Oxygen XML editor, and right now the only thing in that is a file that has the license codes that we're going to be able to use during the course. And then a tab for a weekly course schedule. And this is really an index page that has a link to weekly schedules for all 17 weeks of the semester. Now, the last 2 weeks of the semester are mostly exams. So there are 15 potential teaching weeks, of which we take one off as the break. So we really get just a little bit more than 14 teaching weeks, as it turns out. So that's that. The links are not styled as well as I would like, and that has to do with inserting HTML into a D2L page. But the links are the numerals that serve as the week numbers. So if in fact we click on this bold week number 1, we're going to go to the website that holds all the schedules for me, which is courseinfo.ligent.net, and we'll go right to week 1. Okay, so this is where we're going to keep the schedule information for the semester. I will keep it up to date there. And you can either bookmark this site or you can continue to use the links that are on the D2L page. Typically when we go, we're on a particular week. There's a navigation bar up here, and you can go to the next week, which will show us the schedule for week 2, currently under construction. The rest of the week should be up by weekend. And then you can next your way all the way through to week 17 or previous when that's appropriate. And what you can do is you can go to the index page on this site, and that will show you, again, all 17 weeks. So once you get to the course info site, you can really work pretty independently of D2L. So let's look at the schedule for week 1, the week that we're in right now. And it is organized according to sessions or deadlines. And the first of the session is an optional session that we had last night. And it is an online discussion session that we hold on the GoToMeeting platform. It runs from 7:30 to whenever it's over. It could run as late as 9 o'clock. Last night, I think we were done by 8 because it was the first of the sessions of the semester, and there just were a couple of us getting to know each other there. Things that we'll do in this kind of session, one of the major things is we're going to go over the solutions to your coding assignments. So this is a great place to get feedback about what the right answers were, and if in fact you didn't have them, how we could have turned your answers into the right answers, and if you got stuck, how we could avoid getting stuck the way you got stuck. So all the practical questions we're going to answer there, plus whatever's on your mind. Okay. We can even discuss, whatever the topics of the week are, if that's what's on your collective mind. Okay, so this is an optional session. I hope you're going to come to it most weeks if you can. When we've done this in the past, it's been pretty valuable. So I'm hoping it's going to be valuable again this semester. The link that I show on that portion of the schedule is a link to the GoToMeeting activity. So you can click right through on this and go right to the session that you need to. The second grouping that I have within the weekly schedule is just to let you know that I have office hours on campus on Thursday afternoons from 3 to 5. And if you happen to be on campus and you want to drop by, come on by and say hello, okay? So, we have our other session that's exclusively for us, but, I'm there and you're certainly welcome to come by. I'd love to see you. And then we are going to be organizing the schedule in terms of deadlines. Because this is an online course, we're not going to have class sessions per se, but there's a deadline at the end of the teaching week, which is 11:55 p.m. on Sunday, January 31st. And I'm just expecting you to get your work done by the end of Sunday. And I pick 11:55 because it's easy to put that time into D2L when I want to set a deadline for something that you need to submit to a D2L Dropbox, for instance. And we do have an assignment that's due, so you'll see that there's a coding assignment that's due called Resume 1. Okay, and so there's a Dropbox for Resume 1, and I want you to get your work in there by 11:55 p.m. on Sunday the 31st. What are the other things we're doing this week? Well, I have a copy of the syllabus here. I want you to read that in conjunction with the lecture that I'm doing right now. I want you to read Chapter 1 in the XML in a Nutshell book by Harold and Means, which I really like, and this is a really concise introduction to XML. I think you'll like the book. It's been one of my favorite. Well, it probably is my favorite XML book, and has been through all the editions. But the other thing we're going to do this week, and you're going to need before you do your coding assignment, is you need to install the Oxygen XML editor on your computer. Now, how are you going to do that? Well, you could follow the instructions at the Oxygen XML site, and they'd work fine. Or you'll see here under required recordings that I'm going to do a tutorial, a demonstration of an installation under Windows and one of an installation under Mac OS X. So I'll have those up probably by the end of the day today, and you could look at that and maybe play along and get your Oxygen XML editor installed. I think you'll like the Oxygen XML editor. It's a very popular tool. It's especially popular with people in the LIS field, and I think you're going to like that. Then the coding assignment for this week is creating your resume with HTML and CSS. And what I'm going to have you do is watch a tutorial in which I do it. I'm doing the same thing that you're going to do. Okay, so then when you get to your assignment, you can pretty much just kind of emulate exactly what I did, except instead of putting the information for my resume in your document, you're going to put the information for your resume. So that brings us to the coding assignment, Resume 1. And I just want to point out to you that while we're using an XML editor, and while we're using XHTML, which is the XML compliant version of HTML, we are not trying to create an XML resume document per se. Okay, so we're trying to create an HTML page that conforms to the rules of XML syntax, but the kind of tags that we're going to be using, the elements are going to be HTML, head, body, H1, P, those kinds of tags, okay? And why are we doing that? Well, we're doing it just to get used to using the editor, okay? We're going to learn a couple of features, and we're going to do something that's pretty similar to things we learned in other courses. And then we're going to use this as an introduction to the tool, okay? So I've got 2 documents associated with the assignment. One is the instructions. So if you click through on that, you should see the instructions file. Okay. And the other is the grading rubric for the assignment. One of the things that you're going to notice, in fact, if we go down here to the bottom, we have a potential adjustment on the grading of these coding assignments. So I'm going to be looking out for assignments that show a good faith effort on all parts of the assignment. So you tried to do it in a good faith way and showed me evidence of that. You submitted them on time, which again is going to be by 11:55 on Sunday. And they reflect proper attention to detail. And by that, I'm going to mean things like you named the file the right way. You submitted the right type of file, which in this case is going to be a zip file. And how will you know all that? Well, the instructions on how to do all that well are back on the instructions document. And so I really want to give you guys an incentive to do your assignments on time and to come by the discussion session that we're going to have on Monday evenings so that you can see what the answers are and kind of talk through them. And the only way to get real value is to do it on time. And I'm more interested that you make a good faith effort in doing it on time than you do it perfectly. So if you make a good faith effort on all parts, you submit it on time, and you get the file particulars correct, you're guaranteed to get at least an 85. Okay? If you do it late, you're going to miss a lot of opportunity. So please do it and take advantage of the 85-point deal. Okay, and then typically we're going to have some kind of a participation using the D2L discussion forums, and here the activity of the week is to introduce yourself. If you go to that forum, you'll see some more detail. So that's what we're doing for this week. By the end of the week, we should have up either all the weeks or certainly more of the weeks in the schedule. So pretty quickly, we're going to have the schedule in here for the entire semester. All right, so what else can we look at? Let's look at the syllabus. Okay. So I'm going to make this a little bigger. And here's the syllabus. Okay. And it's a little blurry here in the video, so if you can take out your own copy, it's probably going to help. But since I know what it says, it's not going to be a hardship for me. Okay, so this is an online course. There's no official meeting time, although we do have an optional discussion session on Monday evenings. My contact information is in the syllabus, and I invite you to contact me directly or to come by to see me. I'm most likely to be available at times like office hours. Also available by appointments that you set up via email. And I want to remind you that I've got my mobile number here, so don't call me on my UWM office number. I'm not even sure where that phone is. And definitely don't call me on my home phone because I know I don't know where that is. I really only use my mobile at this point. Excuse me. So I've already talked about the online discussion sessions. Again, high points. One is we're going to review the hands-on assignments that you did for the week before. Okay, that's where a lot of the learning goes on in the course. And then we're going to talk about any other thing that you guys want to talk about. Okay. Description of the course. This is a little bit better description that we had on the last version of the syllabus. This is an introductory course in XML and XML tools. Okay. A lot of the textual material or the textbook material that we're going to be learning from is from the XML world. It's not particularly library and information science oriented, although the tools and the technologies that we're going to learn are tools and technologies that have a pretty strong following in the library and information science world. The other thing that we're going to do is that we're going to explore a bunch of XML tag sets that have been created for applications in the library and information science world. We're going to have you pick one of those and do a proof of concepts project around one of those applications. Okay? So what are the tools and the techniques that we're going to learn? Well, it's probably best to go a little bit ahead. I'm going to go down not to course topics, but to the course objectives. Here's what I'd like you to be able to do by the time that we're done. I'd like you to be able to author XML content documents with and without schemas. Okay? I'd like you to be able to create a schema using the DTD schema feature that was built into XML and the W3C XML schema feature that was added later, which is probably even more popular. I'd like you to be able to validate an XML content document using your schema. Once we create an XML content document, how do we publish it? Well, we don't usually publish it as is. We usually transform it into another form. And the two really popular forms are XHTML, we transform it into a web page, or XSLFO, which is markup that's used to generate high-quality print documents. And so we're going to learn how to do the transformations, and transformations are done with a language called XSLT. Now, some people call these XSL style sheets or XSLT style sheets. I like to call them transformation programs. But this is going to be a major skill for us, learning how to use XSLT. And we're going to learn how to use that to generate XHTML web pages and XSLFO high quality print documents. We're also going to do some amount of work with XQuery. XQuery is yet another XML standard that allows us to process a collection of XML documents. So primarily, when we use XSLT, we are processing a single XML content document. And when we're using XQuery, we're processing a collection of those documents. It's possible to use those two tools in the opposite ways, but that's not how they're commonly used. I'm going to want you to be able to identify a series of important XML tag sets or XML applications of interest to the LIS community. And again, I'm going to want you to pick one of those and do a proof of concept project. Okay? So this is pretty intensive. It's very practical. And there is an opportunity to learn about a whole lot of topics related to XML and to the LIS world. Okay? Let's go back up. What are the books? Well, there are two books that I put on the required list. One is by Harold and Means. It's called XML in a Nutshell. The first author is the famous Elliot Rusty Harold, who's sort of an old dyed-in-the-wool XML guy who's written a lot of the introductory texts. He's got 2 or 3 texts that are really influential. And he and his co-author have written a great book that will give you has a short primer in the front and has a really useful reference in the back. The other book that we're using is a book that I find very helpful, although it's sometimes scary to people, and that is a book by Michael Kay called XSLT 2.0 and XPath 2.0. And we're going to use this book as we learn how to do transformations with XSLT. Now, this is over a 1,000-page book. It's a 1,300-page book, okay? I'm not going to expect you to read this book from cover to cover, but as a reference book, it's invaluable, okay? So I'm going to point you to, kind of easy to learn from sources to learn about the easy parts of XSLT. But when you want to do something either challenging or fancy, you really need you need a go-to book. And the Michael Kay book is the go-to book. So you're not going to read it from cover to cover, but you're going to find exactly what you need in that book enough times that you'd be very happy that it's on your bookshelf. Other books. Well, I've got some optional texts and other resources. There's the Baca book on, it's really a work on metadata that's available through the J. Paul Getty Trust. We're going to be taking a peek at that when we look at some of the metadata applications for XML. There's a book by Tim Cole and MJ Hahn down at Illinois, XML for catalogers and metadata librarians, so people who are going to be catalogers and metadata librarians who want a book that's kind of geared right to them. That's a good book to buy. Not cheap, but good book. The Miller book is a book that we used to use as kind of the main text for this course, and I didn't want to completely retire it, so I've left it on the list as an optional text. Traditionally, we're able to get access to this online through the UWM libraries. And then we've got a series of 4 journal articles here that we're going to be talking about when we're talking about the role that XML plays in the library and information science world. I do have a number of other resources that I make available through the schedule that are not listed in the list of articles here. For the most part, they are links to web resources. Course topics. You can see here that we have a combination of topics. We have kind of what is XML, how do we use it, how do we author documents, how do we design document schemas, how do we implement those, how do we work with things like XSLT, etc. So we have a learning process where we go through the XML standards and tools kind of in a great sequential way, and that is interspersed with some opportunities to go explore XML applications of interest to LIS, like EAD, EPUB, MODS, TEI, METS, DocBook. We have a couple of other ones too. Mark XML, DITA, CDWA, and OAI PMH. Okay, now what I'm going to want you all to do is to read a little bit about all those applications. And what I'm going to want you to do is to pick 3 of those to really explore in depth. And in fact, in terms of the discussions that we're going to do on the discussion forum, I'm going to want you to post 3 fairly long postings on the 3 that you really go and explore in more depth. And then, of course, I'm going to want you to pick one of them to be the subject of your project. Okay, what else do we have here? Work required of students. Okay, so we have the readings. Okay. And they're going to be, in each week, there'll be readings that are required and readings that are optional. The optional ones are going to represent typically the readings that you would do if you were going to go into that particular XML application in depth, one of the 3 that you're going to pick. Okay, we've got a number of recordings like the lecture, and we'll have some tutorials as well. We have coding and other written assignments. For the most part, they're coding assignments. And typically when you have a coding assignments, you're also going to have some kind of a tutorial where I show you how to do that kind of assignment using the tools that we're using. So there's a pretty good correspondence between the tutorials that I'll be putting up for you to watch and the assignments that you're going to do. So I think you're going to find them fairly straightforward to do. Participation is going to be on the forum and in our weekly online discussion group. I already talked about the weekly online discussion group, and to a certain extent I've talked about the forum. In the forum, I want you to do one post this week, actually, to introduce yourself. And then I want you to look ahead and pick 3 of these topics about XML applications for the LIS world. I'm going to want you to do more reading and long posts on 3 of them. For the most part, I'd like the post to be done by the week in which we are doing the discussion. So post by the end of Sunday night. And then the rest of us are going to read the forum, and we're going to post supportive, conversational, and discussion-oriented posts that are not kind of long-form posts in their own right. Okay? So start to look at this list of XML applications. Try to come up with maybe 3 candidates for what you think you might want to do your project about, and try to figure out which ones you're going to do. The project is meant to be a way to get you started on a real kind of practical XML project that is of interest to you. Okay? Ideally, this might be a project that you might continue on after the course is over, okay? So you're probably going to get some amount of content, and you're probably going to get that into a content-oriented XML document. You're probably going to do some amount of transformation with XSLT. And then you're probably going to, as a result, you're going to generate either HTML pages or PDFs using the XSLFO engine that I'm going to have you install when we get to that part. I've listed 4 projects here that are things that people have done already. And there are many other opportunities. So this idea about what's a proper project, it's really has to have a couple of qualities. On one, you have to be interested in it, okay? Because that's what's really going to drive your learning. 2, it's got to, it can't be just easy peasy. It has to have some challenge to it. What I will do is to work with each of you to tune in on, dial in on exactly what the right combination of project elements will be for you. When you're done, you're going to do really 3 things. You're going to hand in the project code, okay, just like you've been handing in the code for your essentially weekly assignments. You're going to write a project report, which is a short paper, and then you're going to make a presentation, which I don't have this here, in which you show us what you've done with your project. So there's actually a third part here that I'll probably have to add, the presentation. In which case, we just want to see what everybody did. It's a lot of fun, okay? Let's look at the grades. The grades, 40% is going to come from the coding assignments. The participation is going to be 20%. Okay, so this has worked well in the past as a highly interactive course, and I'd like to keep it that way. And the project itself would be 40%. Okay, and again, I don't have a presentation there, but I would like a presentation. So the presentation will be part of your overall participation grade. Okay. Letter grades are going to be assigned to number grades about as expected, so no real surprises there. And the end of the syllabus is really sort of an interesting juxtaposition. On one hand, here's a bunch of topics that we talk about in every syllabus in a kind of a boilerplate way. So you kind of say, well, they're standard. On the other hand, they're very important. So if you've been through these and you know what all the issues are for you and you have them covered, great. But, the issues that we're talking about here are the policies, particularly with respect to students with disabilities, military duty, incompletes, discriminatory conduct, academic misconduct, complaints, grade appeals. So I invite you to make sure that you've read through all this information comprehensively. And if you have questions or problems, I'm here to discuss them and to help you. So with that, I'm going to wrap up our introductory lecture, and I look forward to speaking to you again next time. Bye-bye.